Hey guys, welcome to Velocity Podcast. The background looks a little bit different because I am waiting to meet somebody, and of course I am half an hour early. I've only done one podcast in May, and my goal is 2 a month. So I was like, you know what? No time like the present. What I want to talk about is I was driving to Oshawa for a videography shoot, and on the way there I was listening to Gary Vee, and he's talking about his new book, Day Trading Attention. So a lot of the ideas I talk about come from his book. I haven't read it yet, but I've seen him promote it. And then what I've experienced myself and practiced. I've been in the digital marketing industry for 12 years, believe it or not. In 2012, I was promoted to director of social media when YouTube was like, and Facebook and Twitter were like the big players, and we're just like, oh, it's not a fad. Okay, we should probably do something about this. So I've been in it for a long time. There's been a lot of evolution when it comes to social media marketing. Now, of course, if you know anything about marketers, you know they ruin everything. So what started as a nice social platform, we quickly took over and we're like, we could make money from this. And that is what we have done. So fast forward to Instagram this year. So Instagram really, when did that become like super popular where people were actually like using it, when it became a contender? I bet it was around the 2012 time. Before it was just obviously all pictures only. It was a picture site. And now it has evolved. It's a video site. People are using it to search things. Today, when I was in Oshawa for a videography shoot, it's like if I go to Google sometimes, and I go to ChatGPT, and I go to TikTok, and I go to Instagram to search things. So I think that's really, and maps. So Google has also evolved as like maybe not the person that knows everything, because we have all these other tools at our disposal. So back to the Gary Vee thing. He was talking about like, and this was what was really, really interesting to me. And I was like, I'm like, I'm buying the book. I wasn't going to buy the book, but because he said this, I'm going to buy the book. What is fascinating to me is he put into words what I have felt for a long time. Basically, he said, when it comes to social media, your brand guidelines need to be thrown out the window. Now, of course, he put it so eloquently, like it comes down from corporate America, and it's like this idea like, hey, we did commercials like this, so therefore we need to advertise on social platforms like this, and it's really a top-down thing. In my experience, what I do for myself on Instagram, what I do for my clients on Instagram, I sometimes will stick to the brand colors. I sometimes stick to the fonts and the guidelines, but I rarely do. So if you take a look at my social media accounts, you're going to see different colors. You're going to see sometimes my logos on things. Most often it isn't. You're going to see different fonts. You're going to see a whole bunch of different things. What I have figured out over the years, and I really watch my own scrolling behaviors. I watch my kids' scrolling behaviors. They're obviously like a lot younger than me, of course. And I don't know why. I find it really interesting to watch people consume things, whether it's commercials. Sometimes I sit at a traffic light and I look at people and watch them look at the billboard. So if you're feeling eyes on you, it probably is me being like, are they watching it? Or are they on their phone? Anyway, so what I'm saying is it's so interesting because on one side of things, we have marketers who are like, hey, stick to the brand color. And I know it and I hear it, like branding guidelines are everything. Font is everything. Color is everything. But when I scroll social media, when I am like, oh, why did I stop on that picture? Why did I stop on this video? I ask myself these questions. Sometimes I literally ask people around me like, hey, why did you stop on that video? Which is probably really annoying and probably not even socially appropriate, but I do. And here's the thing. It's not because it like matches up with anybody's brand guidelines. It's because it suits their needs at the time, because they're in, say, the Instagram platform. They're in that like, what's the word? Not economy. They're in that bubble basically. And we are on Instagram and we expect people to deliver a certain way on Instagram. I expect people to deliver content a certain way when I'm on LinkedIn. I'm expecting like more professionalism. I'm expecting longer stories, essentially, like a little more storytelling, a little more business, and when I'm on Twitter, I'm expecting more politics maybe. I'm expecting like quick tweets. I'm expecting maybe threads. Whatever. Every single platform has us expecting content to be delivered to us a certain way. Now, when we keep our brand colors and when we make everything really, really organized and visually pleasing, I will say for sure, like I've been on accounts when I'm scrolling, and when I look at the feed, I'm like, wow, that's so pretty. Immediately, I'm like, that's so pretty. Like, I love when people take time, and I will never do this. I love when people take time to do, like, say one black post and then a white post and then a black post and then a white post. So it looks like this little checkerboard grid. When I open it, I'm like, oh, cool. But when I scroll, nothing stands out. Nothing makes me want to click anything, because at the end of the day, it ends up looking all the same. And I don't know if curated everything is the way to go when it comes to social media. When it comes to commercials, 100% you need your like brand guidelines totally like accounted for, and like everyone's obeying them. When you're doing packaging, 100% brand colors, fonts, all that branding has to be like perfect. When it comes to social, you're just talking to regular people, and every single post is an ad. Whether you are promoting your business like, hey, I'm Sherry Barn, I own Purple Bean Media, you need my help, I'll take care of your social media. Or if it's just like, hey, I'm Sherry and I love the Euro Cup and I'm so excited to cheer my team on, that's also a selling post. I'm getting to know my customers, I'm connecting to my audience. But if everything was perfectly matched, perfectly color-coded, perfectly matching to the brand guidelines, is it clickable? Do you stop the scroll? Now, the other thing I want to touch on is when people are on Instagram, and I'm focusing on Instagram because tomorrow I'm doing a talk on Instagram. When you're on Instagram, it's not very often you actually click through to someone's feed. So you don't see the final product of black and white, black and white, black and white. You're scrolling through the feed, sorry. You don't click onto someone's profile, you scroll through the feed, because that's what Instagram does. And actually, Instagram's showing us people do scroll through the feed. What they really view, though, the most viewed content on Instagram is stories. So people like click through all these stories, and it's nonstop. And I literally sometimes spend like 25 minutes and I'm like, oh my gosh, and that's normally what I would do. I'm doing this podcast instead. Normally I would just sit on my phone and consume content. So I'm trying to be a little more, productive. But what I'm trying to say, it's my long way of saying, it doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be beautiful. You don't know what kind of content is going to connect with the person. So I've told these stories before, but like, I love social media. I do mainly organic content on social media. I do some ads. I've done billboards. I network. And of course, word of mouth is amazing and you can never go wrong with word of mouth. But when I started, and when I was like, okay, I'm taking social media seriously, when I started Purple Bean, that is, in 2017, I started taking it seriously like probably 6 months after I started my business. That is when the phone started ringing. Now I had, at that point, I think it was 2018, someone called me and they said, hey, I'm with a TV show and I would love for you to meet with me. I'm hiring a social media manager. And I'm like, okay, it sounded way too good to be true. So I was really skeptical. And anyway, and he's like, listen, I watched your videos. I know you know what you're talking about. Now, do you think, and I know the video, he specifically actually talked about one video, which was me just saying like, hey, if you're doing a video like this, take time to upload it to Instagram and then to Facebook and then to YouTube. Don't just upload it to YouTube and share the links, because the platforms don't like it. They want you to stay in their environment. So they're not going to like send you to Facebook or send you to YouTube, right? They all want you to be on their platform spending time. That's how they get their money. So I was like, oh, and that video, I remember I didn't have a lot of makeup on that day. The lighting was horrible. I was just like, oh, I should do a quick video. Did a quick video, published it, forgot about it. And that alone, I don't even know how much, tens of thousands of dollars that brought me in. Not because I sold my service, not because it was beautiful and I stuck to my brand guidelines and all that kind of stuff. I broke my own rules. There was no captions. Like, it just was a video that in my eyes was a throwaway video. But what that did was connect me to my audience. That kind of gave the social proof, like, okay, this girl knows what she's talking about. Let me get on the phone with her. Now, how do you think that sales meeting went? It went amazing. It wasn't even a sales meeting. He already made up in his mind. He wanted me. It was just all a matter of, okay, let's work out budget. Let's work out a contract. Let's get moving. That is the power of social media. So sometimes we get really, really caught up with making sure everything's absolutely perfect, making sure it's all color coded or it looks like a magazine. That doesn't matter. In fact, I am saying, and again, this comes from the Day Trading Attention book, Gary Vee, and I 100% agree, that is a stumbling block to your scrollers because no one cares, first of all, and it doesn't make you stop the scroll. And I always say, I literally have a t-shirt that says, you need to stop the scroll. That's the goal of social media. So when you're looking at your own Instagram, don't get all concerned like when you look at people's and be like, oh my gosh, I can never be patient enough to do black, white, or like a nice beautiful grid or like a magazine format. Don't even worry about that at all. I'm telling you right now, I've made most of my money by just posting, being myself, doing videos like this. This authentic connection cannot be replicated. And although people might copy, I know I have some people in my field, of course, that like watch and maybe copy and do whatever. You can't copy authenticity. You can only be who you can be. So I think that is really fascinating. So don't get discouraged when you see people with like picture perfect grids. It doesn't necessarily help them. It might make their ego feel good because it looks beautiful, but it doesn't actually help them at the end of the day. So shifting focuses from that grid-like perfection. The other thing about that is opportunity comes up. And this is why even if I wanted to have that kind of grid, I could never, because I'll be sitting in a car and be like, oh, I have an idea for a video. Or I have like 30 videos in my drafts that I'm just waiting to release. Or like a few weeks ago, Instagram released a huge update and I was like, okay, I need to do a video about this update. It's really, really, it's advantageous to be flexible. And I feel like when you have those perfect grids, you're not necessarily, you're not flexible because you have to stick within that guideline. So anyway, I'm going to read the Gary Vee book, him just talking about how we consume social media and how the like big corporations and then people maybe we listen to are like, oh, you got to do this, got to do this, got to do that. It's like, no, that's the old school way of marketing. Old school way of marketing is brand guidelines, fonts, colors, doing this, doing that. No, the new way of marketing is blending into the platform so people don't even realize they're being sold to. It's kind of like, what's that marketing called when you're product placement? You're watching a movie, then all of a sudden you see like a Burger King thing in the background and you're like, oh, I could go for a Whopper, which by the way, I had one today for the first time. I don't even know if I've ever had a Whopper before. It was all right. Anyway, so it's kind of like product placement. It's just that subtle marketing because I'm not going on Instagram to be sold to, but I can be sold to because I've definitely bought things off Instagram, right? I'm almost 40 years old, a woman on Instagram. You can 100% sell to me. And in the future, I think is really interesting, just kind of along the lines of that corporate big like identity thing. I think in the future, we will see more Logan Pauls, like he has Prime. We will see more, Kylie Jenner, she has a makeup line. Justin Bieber's wife has a makeup line. Like we're going to see all these influencers create. And I think we're going to see a pullback of like Dove or these huge big companies that we all could talk about off the top of our heads because influencer marketing is becoming such a thing. You have your following, you have the built-in trust. Next thing you know, people want to buy your product. So whether you're thinking on a huge scale, like, okay, I want to go with a national like beauty line, or if you are similar to me, just I want to stay in my local-ish area, I want to sell my services, I want to have a nice life doing this because I love social media, you have to consider how you're coming across. And how you come across is how you would feel if you came across your content. So seriously, next time you are scrolling, to pay attention to what you are consuming, pay attention to what you're looking at. Okay, I'm going to close with the last thing that Gary Vee talked about on this podcast, and I totally forgot, but I loved the trend when it happened. Do you guys remember that guy who was skateboarding and drinking Ocean Spray? Ocean Spray sold out nationwide. It was like all of a sudden this one video that I don't even think Ocean Spray put on. It was another guy who just like did it for fun. That was effective marketing, and that's what we need. Now, that didn't have brand guidelines. It didn't have anything that would smell like a normal commercial. It didn't have any corporate feel to it. It connected with audiences. That's the kind of content we need on social media. Connect with the audience. Connect with who you want to sell to. If you're selling to like 25 to 35-year-old women, reflect that in your marketing. Have 8-year-old women promoting your products. If you could have like a lucky thing like Ocean Spray did where something goes viral, that's amazing. But you need to connect, you need to be authentic, and we need to let go of the rules of marketing from like, I don't know, the 80s, the 90s. Like, when did they decide everything had to be so rigid? But flexibility is key. Anyway, that's my podcast for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Different format, but hey, I guess I'm practicing what I preach. All right, contact me if you need any marketing help. If you want to be a guest on my podcast, I would love for that to happen. Feel free to DM me.